Before we get into today's episode, I have a quick favor to ask you. I put a panel forward for South by Southwest next year called The Untapped Power of Famous Characters in Advertising. The pitch is simple. Brands keep chasing the next celebrity face when some of the most powerful, most trusted assets in marketing are not being considered at all. Characters like Shrek, Popeye, Care Bears, with decades of built-in emotional equity and none of the risk. I'd love your vote. I've left the link in the show notes, and voting closes August 23rd, so there's a bit of a window, but don't let it slip. It won't take long, and I would really appreciate it. Now, last week, I spent the whole episode on Disney's licensing machine. Turns out that was good timing because License Global just dropped their 2026 Top Global Licensors report, and guess who's sitting at number one? Again, it's Disney. So today feels like a natural continuation. We're zooming out from Disney to see exactly where it sits against everyone else in the industry, who's closing the gap, and who's about to make a serious move up the board. I'm David Bourne, and this is Born to License. Now let's start at the top because the order tells you a lot about where the industry actually is right now. Disney holds number one, as it has for as long as anyone can remember, built on Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, 20th Century Studios, and National Geographic, amongst others, all sitting under one roof. And here's the thing worth noting. Disney only grew 2% this past year. Most of the other licensors in the top 10 grew faster. And that's the same story we dug into last episode. The portfolio is enormous, but it isn't being mined nearly as aggressively as it could be. Number two is Authentic Brands Group. And if you don't know them by name, you certainly know their brands. Forever 21, Brooks Brothers, Sports Illustrated, and the rights to people like Marilyn Monroe, Muhammad Ali, and Elvis Presley. And as of very recently, the Care Bears. This year, they picked up Dockers and a majority stake in Guess, and they're leaning hard into what they call entertainment licensing, their fastest growing arm. Kevin Hart is now part of that portfolio too. People Inc. comes in third. It's the publisher behind 40 brands such as People, Better Homes and Gardens, and Food and Wine. They're one I personally haven't had much to do with in my licensing career. A lot of their business is focused on the publishing side of things with a monthly audience of over 175 million people. NBC Universal sits at number 4, an incredible portfolio across film, TV, and animation. They did a brilliant job with turning Wicked into one of the strongest licensing programs we've seen, contributing to their 18% growth. And they have a big year in 2027 with Shrek 5 coming out, which will no doubt be a huge licensing moment for the year. Hasbro sits at number 5. Peppa Pig continues to be a force to be reckoned with when it comes to kids' licensed products, but they're also tapping into incredible fandom with licensing programs around Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. Their board game business continues to thrive with the likes of Monopoly, where they continue to find creative ways to license what is probably the most recognizable game in the world. They reach over 500 million kids, families, and fans around the world, which is truly a mind-blowing figure. And then at 6, we get the biggest mover in the entire top 10, Pokémon, up 31%. That's $3.7 billion in a single year, enough to leapfrog Warner Brothers Discovery. 30 years in, and Pokémon is still accelerating. A massive anniversary campaign, Pokémon Go's 10th birthday, and runner collaborations like what they did with Tiffany Co. I dedicated an entire episode to Pokémon back in March to celebrate their 30th anniversary, and they also got a special mention on my recent Comic-Con podcast too. Have a listen if you haven't already. Warner Bros. Discovery drops to number 7. Obviously an incredible portfolio of brands and a lot happening with them at the moment. More on them shortly. Blue Star Alliance sits at number 8. Again, a licensor that I haven't really had too much to do with in my career. They have a portfolio that includes a lot of fashion and lifestyle brands, and they generate more than $14 billion in annual retail sales. They have over 600 licensees and over 500 branded retail locations worldwide. Now, Sanrio has moved up to the 9th position, up 39% and knocking Mattel down to 10th place. Hello Kitty has had an incredible couple of years and one of the licenses that gets mentioned a lot when companies reach out to Born to License to help with their licensing. We had our client Wolfpack sell out of their Hello Kitty backpack collection in less than 72 hours, so we experienced firsthand the power of Sanrio's IP. And Mattel, despite dropping to 10th position, is still incredibly strong, with Barbie being their standout IP from their portfolio. Hot Wheels continues to do really well as their boy-focused offering as well. I'm watching to see when they'll greenlight the next Barbie film. A lot of reporting on the negotiations taking place between Mattel and Warner Bros. Discovery at the moment. I'm sure we'll see it get greenlit soon, and that will no doubt lead us to what will possibly be the biggest licensing tentpole the industry has ever seen. The first film was huge, but the second one will be bigger from a licensing standpoint because retailers and licensees will go in with confidence that it's going to be huge. Okay, I'm excited about the next part of this. Let's talk about new arrivals. 10 new brands entered the report this year, and the pattern among them tells you where licensing is heading next. The standout is Peanuts Worldwide, debuting as a standalone entry at number 16 with an estimated $4.3 billion. Peanuts used to be reported as part of WildBrain, but WildBrain sold its 41% stake to Sony back in December, and now Charlie Brown and Snoopy get their own line in the report for the first time. If you missed my episode about the power of Peanuts back in January, go back and have a listen. Now, Ford also joined this year, extending the brand into toys, apparel, and home decor. They're sitting at the 25th position with an estimated $2.8 billion of sales, though they've been licensing their IP out for quite a long time, so I'm not quite sure why they're only entering the top licensors report this year. It could be because they simply didn't submit during previous years. I'm not quite sure. But the pattern I'd flag hardest is food and beverage. 4 of the 10 new entrants this year are related to food. TGI Fridays, the Magnum Ice Cream Company, Ocean Spray Cranberries, and Bell. F&B brand licensing has enormous momentum at the moment as we start to see some really creative collaborations in this space around the world. I expect to see many more F&B brands entering the report in the years to come. Now let's look at the brands that have achieved the highest growth. By percentage growth, Libertas Brands posted an almost unbelievable 298% increase. They own the exclusive rights to global plush brand Fila that is going from strength to strength. Formula One grew 264%, driven by a genuinely enormous year that included the highest grossing sports film of all time. And Mike's Hot Honey, a brand most of us didn't think of as a licensing story 2 years ago, grew 159% purely off flavor licensing into snacks, chips, and condiments. Again, food licensing has serious momentum, guys. By dollar value, it's Authentic Brands Group leading with that $4 billion jump, followed by Pokémon's $3.7 billion and Sanrio's $3.3 billion. Now, I promised you I would come back to Warner Bros. Discovery. Here's a forward-looking note worth flagging before we wrap up. Paramount currently sits at number 12 with $7 billion, and Warner Bros. Discovery sits at 7 with $15.5 billion. If the widely expected merger between the two actually goes through, that combined entity would sit at roughly $22.5 billion in licensed retail sales, which would leapfrog NBC Universal's $20 billion and land the merged company in 4th place overall, right behind People Inc. They'll become the second biggest entertainment IP owner on the planet and start to rival Disney in many ways. If it happens, well, that's a genuinely different competitive landscape at the top of this list next year, and it's worth watching very closely. Now, all of this comes from License Global's 2026 Top Global Licensors White Paper, and full credit to their editorial and research team for putting this together every year. It's genuinely one of the most useful benchmarks in our industry. If you want to read the full report, you can download it at licenseglobal.com. It's free, and trust me, it's worth your time. That's it for this episode, and don't forget, please vote for the South by Southwest panel before August 23rd. The links are in the show notes. Thanks for listening. I'm David Bourne. Born, and this is Born to License.